Oh, I don't think I got any epic intro for this one.
I think we've got some drone shots.
All right, they're gonna have to do. Okay, so the bike you saw just there on screen was the Specialized Turbo Creo SL Comp Carbon EVO. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because it's written down here too. And that's the bike we're going to be talking a lot about today. Now, we've had this bike on loan for a few months from Specialized. We were looking for a gravel demo bike for Von to ride. This one popped up.
That's right, but we weren't looking specifically for an e-bike. So it was good to see exactly what this had packed into it. And what were you interested in?
I was interested in the technology. Given it's one of the newer model e-bikes, packed with all the goodness of head unit integration, system management, and one of the newer batteries and motors, I was keen to see what it was all about from a technology side of things. Von, you were keen on...
I was keen on the ride feel.
Just going out and riding the bike. So in a previous video, I raced Von up Mount Hollowback, a very short, steep climb here, and Von won that very, very convincingly. Now, Von, you've been out riding this bike at the Pig and Whistle gravel event too?
Yes, that was more than 80 Ks on that day. And then just on weekend rides out on the gravel.
And we've also hooked the kid trailer up too, as well, with little Maxie enjoying that. I went out the following weekend after the Pig and Whistle and did the 42-kilometre event. It's only just out the road, so it didn't take long to get out there. And sort of I got to experience what Von rode the week prior. So there's a lot to cover today. A lot for this bike, a lot for e-bikes in general. We're going to cover the bike specs, the e-bike specs, how it actually works, what is pedal assist and how to control it. We'll talk about the Achilles heel of all e-bikes in Australia. Wait for that one. We'll then cover a few ins and outs of this bike and some of the special features that it has. And along the way, we'll give our take on what it was all about and our experience with this bike. Now, first up to the tech specs, let me quickly sail through those ones. It's the 2021 Specialized Turbo Creo SL Comp Carbon EVO. In a nutshell, it's a gravel e-bike. Retails for $10,800 Australian, full carbon frame, Shimano GRX mechanical mostly, comes with a mixture of Praxis equipment in there as well. It has a 1x, so it's a 44 chainring up the front and 1142 on the back. DT 470 wheel set with 38mm tyres, can accommodate up to 42mm tyres on this, has a dropper seat post, FutureShock 2.0 front suspension and a Q factor of 181mm. The EBike specifications of this, I'll quickly scroll through those. The battery is a Specialized SL1320 fully integrated battery, so the battery is internal to the frame. 320 watt hours rated at 240 watts of mechanical motor power. I keep calling it an engine, but that's like a steam... I'll change my terminology. The range of this engine, the range of the motor is 130 kilometers in eco mode. The range extender is an option that you can get which sits in the bottle cage as well, which gets you an extra 65 kilometers. But your mileage may vary, literally, based on the mode used, your riding style, the terrain, the speed you ride at, and quite a few other things. 2.5 hour full recharge time, and the weight all up of this bike, Von, we had to put it on the scales.
It weighed in over 14 kilograms, but that was with both pedals and the bottle cages. So with those taken off, it would be just under 14 kilos.
So 13 point something, probably 13.9, but yeah. In e-bike terms, I believe it's quite light. In performance bike terms, self-assisted bike terms or no assistance bike terms, it's quite heavy. Now onto how the bike works. If you've ridden an e-bike with pedal assist, you know exactly what we're about to say, but some people out there do not know what pedal assist actually means. Some people said, oh, is it a throttle? Is it a button? How do I? Pedal assist means you simply press the pedals and it assists that. The motor then kicks in, not the engine, and it just takes off. Now, when you're pedaling along, there are 3 modes, and I counted my fingers there, 3 modes of resistance, because there really is 4. You can turn that assistance off entirely. The 3 modes, Eco, Sport, and Turbo. Now, there's a lot to get your head around when it comes to exactly what these levels of assistance mean. So I'll read out what I have here. There's a few different interpretations of how it actually works, but we'll simplify it once I've gone through these. Eco matches your effort up to 30% or 35% of the motor's power. That can be configured. Sport matches your effort up to 60% of the motor's power. And Turbo mode, that's give it everything, matches your effort up to 100% of the motor's power, or 240 watts. Now, the 3 assist modes can be tuned almost infinitely in different ways with the Mission Control app. And there's support, and there's also peak power. Now, peak power can put an artificial cap on the level of support that you get with those different modes. I'll put a link below to the official description of exactly what all those mean, but go nuts. I took a while to get my head around exactly how it all works. The bike itself can also report the rider power prior to the motor, so it knows the effort that you're doing. The power meter wasn't all that accurate. It was ballpark, but when compared to the power meter pedals that I had on the bike, it wasn't quite 1 for 1. Let's put it at that. The 3 modes are controlled by the button on the top tube. Simple as that, 1, 2, 3, or press and hold for off, or can be controlled via the mobile app if you pull that out. And another thing of note, what we had to remind ourselves of, that we wasn't going to go flat in the middle of nowhere for us. You do get an indication that you're getting low on battery, either via your connected head unit, or if the battery hits 20% or lower, it goes to eco mode to get you home. Now, before we dig into our experience side of things, I did go down a rabbit hole with this one the other day, trying to understand exactly how much power or mechanical power those 3 modes are going to give. I put the bike on an indoor trainer and I rode at 200 watts with some power meter pedals, the power from the bike itself and the snap. I was pedaling at 200 watts, and I'll pull up the numbers here. So pedaling at 205 watts on the pedals, the bike thought I was doing 225, so there's a bit of a discrepancy there. And obviously off was no assistance whatsoever. Eco mode, so I put it to the first, so like easy level assistance. That gave me an extra 15% of power on top of what I was already doing. It says 35%, but it gave me 15% of actual power to the drivetrain and propelling me forward on the indoor trainer. I told you it was a rabbit hole. In sport mode, it matched me up to 73% on top of what I was doing of power, which is ballpark 60%. And in turbo mode, 100%, I was pedaling at 200 watts of my own energy. And having that with the 3 bars turbo on, I was getting an additional 94.97% on top of what I was doing. So it was doing 427 watts at the snap. Now there's drivetrain losses, there's mechanical losses, there's everything. That's kind of ballpark. I then went next level and put erg mode on the trainer. I set erg mode to 300 watts, pedaled with it off. The difference there was around 11% difference, so there's some drivetrain losses happening there. Then I switched to eco mode, and then I had to pedal less because, again, the resistance was after the assistance of the motor. 300 watts, and I only had to pedal at 262 watts, according to the bike, which is a 14% assistance, which is ballpark what we saw before. Sport mode gave me a 67.5% assistance, which, again, ballpark of what it said. But in turbo mode, where the torque was very, very low, the motor went, no, I've got this, I've got your back, and gave me 298% assistance on top of what I was doing. I was hardly pedaling, but that motor really, really kicked in. So something weird happens in erg mode on an e-bike, indoors, at full turbo mode, but kind of as to be expected, it's not really what they're for. But what it did give you an indication of, though, is what kind of power this motor had. So me pedaling at 74 watts gave me 300 watts power at the rear wheel. This thing can climb almost any hill. That's enough for that rabbit hole. Let's dig ourselves back out of that and continue on. That was a bit of fun, though. Onto the system management. Von, you were across the system management before I was. You were riding this prior to me throwing a leg over?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to pair it with your iPhone, initially with the Mission Control app.
Mm-hmm. And with that, the security, again, why can't someone come along and pair to your bike and change everything? There was a security code.
Yeah, there is a security code under the main panel, which you have to access separately with tools.
Yes, so you can't just get up to a bike or walk up to a bike at it out in the open and then reprogram everything, although that would be fun. It can't be done. Now with the Mission Control app, you can record your rides, you can do system diagnostics, though I did note the firmware upgrades needed to be done via the service center, so you had to return to base to a specialized dealer to get those done. Interesting. No reasoning behind that given, but I guess you do end up with a giant brick if things do go wrong with firmware updates.
Yeah, they do recommend to pop into your specialized store once a year for that.
Okay, cool. The Mission Control app also has smart control. So it's an e-bike with smart control. We're giving control over to the robots. There's some interesting modes for that. You can tell it how far you're going to ride the bike, how much elevation you've got, and how much battery you want at the end of that ride. Yep. And then it will then control the support given to you, which is pretty cool. There's a hill climb mode too, which I couldn't quite get my head around just yet, but there was heart rate mode. Now heart rate mode, there's similar things for indoor training where you set, let's just say 140 heart rate. That's where you want to be. If you're riding along, paired with a Bluetooth heart rate sensor, if you're below that, the bike's giving you no assistance. So it's making you work up to that level. If you go over that level, depending on how far you go over, it pours on more assistance from the motor. So it's kind of cool. There's a few different modes you can play around with there. I switched it on for 5 kilometers and had to switch it off because of that Achilles heel, which is the 25k an hour limit here in Australia. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but there are a few different modes you can use, but they really weren't to my liking. For me, I like to just get on the bike and go, pulling out an app and telling it where I'm going, and it just becomes a little bit too much, but it is there if you do want to use those features. Next up on my list here, Strava, and the question or the statement always comes up, are you out stealing KOMs or QOMs on an e-bike? Vaughn, did you get that asked of you on a few rides?
Yes.
It came up in my feed, don't worry about that. So, were you out stealing QOMs by yourself with that assistance?
Not at all. There is ways that you can have that set up.
Yeah, so again, from the technology point of view, I was keen to see how this actually worked when you were paired to, say, a Garmin unit or a Wahoo unit, because when we first uploaded, it automatically marked the rides on Strava as e-bike. Now, the e-bike segments are different to the unassisted bike or the normal bike segment, so there's no cross-pollination there whatsoever. If your ride is marked as an e-bike, you're not stealing QOMs or KOMs from self-assisted riders. Self-assist, self-powered. There's no assistance. I'll get the terminology right once. So anyway, the way that works technically on the Garmin units, if you set up the profile for an e-bike and pair it to the ANT+ LEV, the Light Electronic Vehicle Sensor, which gives you all the stats from the e-bike to your head unit, your ride or your activity is marked as an e-bike. So Strava knows about it. Same deal with the Wahoo units. As soon as you pair that LEV sensor, bang, your activity is an e-bike, and Strava will put you in the e-bike category. So there's no need to worry about our rides in particular. Now, if you have an older model head unit and you're not pairing that sensor, there's no way it's going to know. But again, people in Strava upload motorbike rides, car rides, ambulance rides I've seen, so there's an element of self-policing that has to happen there anyway. But from a technology point of view, it's a solved problem. I also noticed Strava did strange things with totals. Wasn't adding my total cycling time for the week, although today they have added an additional panel on the mobile app. I'll pull that up on screen now so you can see how many e-bike Ks you've done. And Trainer Road wouldn't import my rides. Even though I was using my own power meter pedals, it was my own effort. Trainer Road, the auto import from Strava, went, nope, not counting those. I had to manually import those. So I guess early days for using e-bikes as a training tool. Now, on to that Achilles heel. Let's talk about this one. Here in Australia, it's our law that e-bikes need to be pedal assist. I think it's up to 250 watts. They need to be pedal assist and speed restricted to 25 kilometers per hour. So these restrictions are due to law, not due to the bike itself, and it's across the board for e-bikes. Other countries have different regulations. Vaughn, we're one of the slowest. I think EU's the same
We're
with
the
Australia.
same with EU,
Yep.
That's right. It's different in New Zealand and the US.
Yep. Obviously,
they're a little bit faster.
well, it wouldn't want to be any slower.
So their mileage might vary again.
It will. So I guess obviously the faster you go on these bikes, the more assistance you get, the less range you get. So there's an upside to that.
Yeah.
But this really wasn't. And here's one of our discussion points that we'll dwell on for a little bit today. The bike itself was what I said to Vaughn straight away was it's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It changed its stripes very, very quickly at exactly that 25k an hour mark.
Yes.
The first time that was super evident to me, it was we were riding out to that Mount Hollowback climb, flat section of gravel, quite a fast ride. A lot of our flat gravel roads are quite fast around here. We were cruising into a headwind. I'm on the front. I've swung an elbow. And Vaughn?
Nah. not coming through.
Come on, Vaughn. Like, come on. I'm an equal opportunity rider. Vaughn should do the same amount of work on the front as I am.
Well, I thought that it would be fine, but at that point in time, the motor was not kicking in for me and it was into a headwind and you were going faster on the front anyway.
Yeah, I looked down. I was doing 27, 28 kilometers per hour. So Vaughn wasn't on technically an e-bike. Vaughn was on a 14 kilo gravel bike. So there's that limitation. Now, I was trying to think, how do we explain, or how do I get my head around this 25k an hour limit and why it applies to us and a lot of other competitive cyclists out there, but then the recreational cyclist won't really be impacted by this, if that makes sense. Now, I think it comes down to the average speed of our rides. On a road bike, I'm out doing 28 to 32k an hour average speed, so my cruising speed might even be higher than that on the flats. You're about the same. You're probably 25, 26, 27 by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you get out in the bunch, you're not going to have any pedal assistance.
So what happens is this bike simply turns into a hill assist bike for us, because our speed is... I mean, if you look at the bell curve of competitive cyclists, it's going to be above that 25k an hour limit in Australia. Technically not the target audience, I guess, for an e-bike. If you're a recreational cyclist, you're a tourer, or you just want to go for a ride on a weekend, of course your average speed is going to be down a little lower, and this isn't going to be a problem. But for us, for me, at the start of a ride, when it wasn't kicking in, it was frustrating, super frustrating, because I was at, say, 26, 27 kilometers per hour cruising speed, and I'd have to drop it back just a few kilometers an hour to get this epic assistance. It was this on, off.
That was the really noticeable point, was that knife edge of the speed restriction. So once you hit it, it dropped you back, and then it brought you back up, and then it dropped you back. So if you were sitting on that knife edge, depending on the terrain or, as you said, the speed that you're traveling at, it would really kick you. It was... Then, so that's the issue that I think that I had mostly with the bike. It was frustrating to a point, but at the end of a ride, I just sort of upped a few gears and went, just take me home, bike, and it did. So it was kind of handy. My overall perspective, though, on exactly what was it like to ride this bike on the Pig and Whistle gravel course, having ridden the same terrain the weekend before on my bike, it just simply flattened out the hills. Now, I think one of the advertising campaigns, was it for this e-bike, where they said the world is flat? I think so, yeah. One of the e-bike ads a few years back was, the world is now flat, which is a great little advertisement campaign. That's exactly what it was about. It really took my perspective away of how steep that was. There was a section on the Pig and Whistle course where we really put the hammer down at the end of the ride, and you were towing me up a hill and I was completely toast. I did that the weekend after on 100% mode, cruised it, absolutely cruised it in at the same speed. Actually, I think I went a little faster. Look at the heart rate, there was like 40 beats different between both efforts, and I was faster on the e-bike, obviously. Is it like the training difficulty slider on Zwift? No, because on Zwift you don't go any faster in game, it just feels a little different on the pedals. This actually makes you go faster. So I guess a 5% hill becomes a 2% hill, or a 10% hill becomes rideable. It also gets me thinking about the performance of e-bike road bikes. Now, which are built just for this. Now, the 25k an hour limit didn't really hinder us at all through the gravel sections and the hills, through the Creswick Forest and the Canadian Forest. It was kind of handy going up a hill where we weren't riding faster than 25k's an hour. But for a road bike where you're going to be cruising a lot faster than that, that restriction and that limit for a performance road bike that's e-bike, I think it's going to work. I really don't. Let's wait and see. Okay, some quick fire ones before we get to the wrap up of this. Von, drop a seat post. This does have a drop a seat post fitted. I didn't use it based on the terrain that I was riding. I used it once and went, hang on. I did that once and then didn't do it again. We've got drop a seat posts on these. See, I don't even use that. The FutureShock fork bouncer on the front with a little dial. Yes, I had that set at the midpoint, and I think I changed it once or twice just when I had some real road corrugations. I wanted to see if it made much of a difference, but in general, no. So I just had it set to medium. I had it locked out most of the time. I did try it on soft once for some corrugations being quite fast, but the vibrations were coming almost at the bike forward rather than up, if that makes sense. So the whole bike was still juttering. It just took the shine off a little bit, or it took the harshness off a little bit. Most of the time, though, I'd forget that I'd turned it off. I'd look down, I'd be squishy on the hard stuff. So I locked that out. I think correct tyres and correct tyre pressure are probably going to be a little bit better for me. It's something that I didn't miss when I went back to the Aspero riding around the other week. Okay, now the Q factor.
Any problem with it being so wide? A standard bike is about 147 mil between pedal interface and pedal interface. It's how wide your feet are, effectively. Mountain bikes, I think, are about 155, 160. I think they are. This is 181, so this is quite wide. Had a bit of a duck stance on this. Was it noticeable for you?
The first time you get on the bike, yes, it is noticeable. Then riding along and subsequent rides, you don't notice it by the end of the ride. I think one of the areas that I did notice it while riding was when you're out of the saddle. So it does feel like you're kind of on steps because you're...
Yeah, it's a bit...
Yeah, even though you're throwing the bike side to side, it is noticeable with a wider stance. It does have that feeling that you're on, say, like a spin bike, but yeah, on subsequent rides, it was not that noticeable. Yeah,
something I adapted to, but definitely stepping off my road bikes, my gravel bikes, and my indoor bikes. Whoa! Especially indoor, because indoor everything is perfectly up and straight and up and right. And I did some efforts on the snap on this bike, and it's like, doof. Alrighty, ride 'em cowboy. It was. I was walking a bit like. You adapt to it. The first 5 minutes, I think you do notice. Wasn't really a limiter though. If this was your only bike, your one bike that you had, you'd adapt to that.
Yeah, and look at your bike fit.
Correct. Yeah. Bike fitters will always help you out. The motor noise, it's not silent.
No, this is not silent. It's not obnoxious. It's not like you've got a motor or whippersnipper connected to you.
You see some of those petrol-powered bikes go past you.
Yeah, it is not like that at all. It's like a light hum, and it's not obnoxious at all when you're riding on your own or even past others.
Now, at the start of the Pig and Whistle ride, it was 3Ks up a 6% climb, I think it was. Von was just ripping through the field because we were late at the start. Actually, you had something with your shoe.
I was running road cleats.
Yeah, right. So Von was
in gravel, which had an issue with a rock getting stuck under. Haha.
So we started a little bit behind the field, and then Von just weaved her way through at 100% mode. The motor was whirring away. It wasn't an obnoxious noise, but people knew. They'd look down and go, "Who the? Oh, okay." And the other noise they heard was me puffing and panting and like, "Von, hold up!" I was on your wheel. It was. You saw the Mount Hollowback climb. It was the same deal again, with a lot of other people weaving through. Again, the story there is the motor is not silent, so you can't get away with riding an e-bike. People will know. Battery. Air travel with an e-bike. Another question that we popped up on this one. Not as easy as traveling with a normal bike.
No. The internal battery on this is too large for standard airline regulations. I mean, everything's different and things will change over time. But that larger capacity, you'll have to have the battery removed from the frame. As you mentioned about the range extender battery, you can do 60 to 70 k's an hour, kilometers with that. Your mileage may vary, but you can use that when the main internal battery is not in there.
Right.
So you can run that instead.
Yep.
Alternatively, Specialized have said that they've got like an exchange program.
So you call ahead at the Specialized dealer where you're heading.
Yeah.
See if they can fit a battery back in as a temporary loan.
That's right. They've got like a loan program. We can pay for that option.
So like a SodaStream bottle, you switch it out, switch it back in?
Something like that.
Okay. Okay, so do be aware of that. Air travel or adventuring with an adventure bike like this one. Check with your airline regulations for that. Now, I believe the battery statistics here, there's something like 300 charge cycles before you see any degradation. There's 700 charge cycles before they recommend replacing the battery. You can check the battery health with emission control, and there's a 2-year warranty on the battery too. Now, given that the world is focusing towards everything E and correct recycling of e-waste and e-parts and things like that, I'm sure the management of batteries and replacement and stuff is going to get even better and better in the future. So something to be aware of though. It does operate on a battery. The gearing. Let's have a quick chat about the gearing. It's a one-by-mechanical. Everything about this bike is E except this.
Yeah.
Hang on, it's this. It's a one-by.
One-by-mechanical.
I was doing two. I had a front chainring there for a sec. Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny that this specific model only has a mechanical shifting, whereas as an e-bike, I would have thought that you
wanted e-shifting. You wanted e-bike. You want the top of the range.
I want all the E's.
Okay. But no issues with the gear ratio with this being a one-by?
No. With the combination of the pedal assist, it got me out of all of the crazy situations I put myself in.
Yeah. Cool. I took this bike into places where I didn't plan to take a bike, actually. I kind of got lost and I was way off track and might have gone through some mud. As I'll pull up on the screen here. The bike survived, the gearing was fine, it was all good. Now, onto the light bulb moment with this, or the aha. Now, I focus on all the tech side of things. If it was just me, and I do appreciate, Von, your input for this one, as well as your sister's input, which we'll talk about in just a moment. For me, I'd be complaining about the power meter accuracy. I'd be complaining about the 25 k's an hour limit. I'd be looking at how to hack that so I can go out and go a lot faster and a lot harder. All of that aside, Von's sister came for a visit. She's fit, not a cyclist though. She wanted to go out for a ride with Von. We fitted her up for the bike, put her helmet on, she threw her leg over, sat on the bike, and within 2 seconds, her eyes lit up and she got it. She knew what pedal assist did. She had the modes sorted, 1, 2, 3. She put it straight to turbo, and she was just laughing up and down the street. So she didn't pull out the app. She didn't set any settings. She didn't understand the peak power or the assist. None of the technical stuff that I get hung up on and that I'm talking about here. And her, again, average speed or average cruising speed was below 25.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. And that really got me sort of standing back going, I'm really grumpy when it comes to tech. And I'm quite hard, and I will be. That's my perspective. Seeing Hannah ride up and down the road, laughing and go, come on, let's go, changed my view on this. And I needed that. I really needed that as a bit of a wake-up call. I deal with a lot of tech, and seeing somebody who doesn't necessarily need to understand the tech, use it, instantly get it, that was super cool. And I think she's more the target audience. So to see that in person, no BS, absolutely brilliant. Von, were you able to keep up with Hannah on those 2 rides? She did 2 30k rides 2 days in a row.
It was a tough one. There was a few times where I went to have a look to see what mode she was in. But all in all, I have to say that this took her to places around our hometown where she'd driven before, but we took the gravel roads or the gravel trails, and it was areas she hadn't seen before. We had a great experience, so much so, like we said, she came back the next day as well.
Let's go again. Von's like, oh, really? And then Von said, I'm going to ride just above 25 k's an hour.
The ones that she really got me on were the hills, though. So I knew about pacing, but it didn't matter about pacing when you've got engine motor coming.
The engine, there we go. Again, it became hill assist for Hannah and also cruise mode assist. Again, I've got to really highlight that point. It really puts everything else into just the lower level categories. Seeing somebody who's this bike is built for actually go out there and enjoy it, and she rode gravel. Yeah, it was more interesting and challenging terrain than she would have picked herself. Yeah, cool. Okay, some other random observations before we do finally wrap this one up, and I appreciate if you've watched this one, more of a conversation, almost Llama Drives video. Telling Max in the trailer with this.
Oh,
it was
amazing.
It was a dream.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure on the warranty of that. It was a demo bike. Ride it like you loaned it.
It's not an issue because we were going below the recommended speeds for this, right? Because the pedal assist was pretty much always on. It was like the concept of the cargo bikes.
Yeah, absolutely. Another application where e-bikes really kick in. And also taking off from the lights. A lot of like entry-level cyclists or newbies to cyclists get what they call clipless pedals, where you do clip in. Just explaining that to new cyclists is confusing, but where you lock your feet into the pedals, that first pedal stroke, it's much easier to just snap in. Yeah,
it gives you that extra push off at the lights. So fantastic for commuting and stop-start through the city. That really made a big difference. But also carrying the trailer, that extra weight carrying the trailer. When you do start off, you're not grinding your way to start, basically.
Okay, let's try to wrap this one up. Von, final thoughts, final words?
It was actually a really good experience, and because I hadn't tried an e-bike like this before at all. So, and while I may not be purchasing an e-bike right now, I can definitely see the application and the fun around this. When I was riding with others, I didn't need it on full send turbo.
Just on that, you said that riding with others, if you had it on full turbo, your acceleration was too fast for them. So you had to sort of really dial it back to ride with others. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I would have this on the lower modes, and that kept the pace a little bit even. But all in all, I really, really enjoyed the ride of this.
Awesome. For me, as a pure roadie, I don't think I'll be riding an e-bike anytime soon as my main bike or my main daily driver. I've ridden Ray's utility bike, the Urban Arrow. You've ridden that one over in Amsterdam as well. The application of e-bikes for a heavier bike is just absolutely brilliant. As I said earlier on, it kind of worries me about performance bikes, especially with the limit in Australia of 25 k's an hour, so I'm not quite sure they'll be a thing. But for people who want to explore their local areas without the investment into fitness to be able to go up certain hills. Now, what I mean by that is, well, if you're watching this channel, you know riding hills. It sucks. It takes a lot of effort. If you want to go for a good, say, 40, 50, 60k ride of a weekend and enjoy it over a certain time period and not be totally slaughtered at the end, you need to maintain that fitness during the week. These bikes allow people to go out there and enjoy those rides and not have to invest in getting on an indoor trainer and training and squeezing in their time. So it's horses for courses. I can see the application for these bikes.
That was the one other observation I had. This made me change my perspective on how long I could ride for as well. So it would extend my own range from that perspective, but it also challenged my terrain mindset as well. So I would take on more challenging terrain because I knew it had my back, basically.
No, hollow back.
I would not want to do that on a normal bike.
I'm still recovering from that, trying to chase you down. Also, other applications for e-bikes, injury recovery, different age groups. If you want to keep up with other people, if you want to keep up with someone who's fit. Your father was an ex-pro cyclist. He's now pushing 80 years old. Let's get him on the bike, I think. He'd love it. He would absolutely love it. He'll come out he'd probably still out-sprint us too. Look, I guess let's wrap this one up finally. So I think e-bikes are here to stay, and you'll see a lot more of these in the near future as prices of manufacturing come down, and that then passes on to more companies being able to produce these and hopefully better prices on the market. Carlton Reid over on Forbes has some really interesting numbers indicating where things are headed for e-bikes, and that's echoed by quite a few industry experts. So all in all, that was a bit of fun. I won't be buying one, but I now understand. I understand the technology behind it. I understand that people aren't necessarily stealing comms on these things. And I absolutely am sure we'll see a lot more of them out there in the future. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks, Von, for coming along. Thanks, Hannah, too, for your experience and really opening my eyes up and putting a leveler on a few of the hang-ups that I had on this bike. That 25 k's an hour that I was hung up on. Yeah, seeing Hannah rip up and down the streets, I'm like, yeah, you know what? That doesn't matter for a lot of people. So, interesting stuff. Okay, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for watching this one. Again, thanks, Von, and we shall see you soon.